Hi, my name is Attorney Nicole Christie, and I'm from the Christie Law Firm, and I'm here again to talk to you about DCF. And so I'm a former prosecutor as well as a former DCF worker, and I take all of that knowledge and put it together to help my clients deal with DCF successfully. So in this third installment, I'm going to talk to you about abuse or neglect. And those are definitions that are key in any DCF investigation. That's what the whole point is to determine whether or not a child has been abused or neglected. The issue is when we think of abuse or neglect, most of us think of it as people who don't feed their children, or people who've left their children home alone for weeks on end. That's neglect. Or people who beat their kids and leave severe abusing on them. That's also abuse. And while that is the definition, or part of the definition of abuse and neglect, it's much broader as well. For DCF, they have an entire list of definitions when it comes to abuse and neglect, and we'll include that in the links below so that you understand that when they come out, they can be looking at a broad range of areas that fall under neglect, and a broad range of areas that fall under abuse. So for example, for neglect, DCF could be coming out to investigate emotional neglect, which typically comes from a parent who is constantly berating the child or exposing that child to violence or things that a child should not be seeing. There's also medical neglect, where a child has not gone to the doctor on a regular basis, where a child hasn't been seen with the dentist. Moral neglect, exposing your child to perhaps child pornography or other kinds of things that really would corrupt the morals of a child before they've even had time to have them corrupted on their own. Or physical neglect, which is not just leaving them home alone or leaving them in the car unattended, but it could be concerns of domestic violence where kids are exposed to that. They're right there in the middle of it. They could be hurt when the fighting is happening between the individuals. So there is a broad range. As well as when it comes to abuse, it's also sexual abuse, sexual molestation, in terms of the abuse in and of itself, along with physical abuse. And physical abuse, you have to understand, is when the child has an injury that's inconsistent with the explanation given. So you are allowed to physically discipline your child within reason. However, if you've left a bruise on the child, and say the child has a handprint on their face and your explanation is they ran into the door, that's going to be a concern for DCF. So understand that whenever a child has an injury and it's inconsistent with the explanation given, that in and of itself could be considered physical abuse. So the key points that I want you to take away from this particular video is that abuse and neglect is a very broad, we have very broad definitions, and you can't think of it in the terms that we normally would think of it. When DCF is going out, they're thinking about all of the definitions and see if the facts fit any of those definitions. And so since the definitions are so broad, it is not hard for DCF to find abuse or neglect if there are enough facts. And so what you have to understand is that if they do find abuse and neglect, it can impact your family in the long term, and that is what we'll be talking about in upcoming videos. And so it's important to understand what has been substantiated against you, what was the finding, if there was a finding, and make sure you get that in writing. And so until next time, we want you to, again, subscribe to our channel, share this with others, leave a comment. If you have some questions about DCF that I haven't touched upon, we'll definitely take that into consideration and make sure we create videos around answering those questions. So until next time, take care and make sure you keep your family first.